Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, welcome. So today I'm going to be talking about cross contour. So the first question is why do cross contour, right? So cross contour are lines that you can put over your form that help show a 3D quality with still keeping with lines. And this is a great introduction to if you're going to be doing cross hatching. I always recommend to people to start with doing cross contour first. Okay, so the goal again is to use lines to make it look more 3D. So one thing that you can do when you're when you're doing cross contour is if you make the lines dark towards the edges, that will greatly help to making it look more 3D. So you want to vary your line quality from going from dark to light back to dark in each part of the hand. And the next thing that I just wanted to mention is that your hand, your fingers are made up of three separate sections, which are kind of almost like cylindrical. If you really sort of break down the shape, they're like sort of cylinders that, are like not exactly cylinders, but close. So, sometimes when you're drawing, if you sort of try to think about a more complex object like a hand, but trying to break it down into shapes like cones or cubes or cylinders. So in this case, we're talking about cylinders. So, in when you're cross contouring, you want to be showing that there's three separate, parts of each finger. So as you can see, that's one of the things that I'm doing right now. And the other thing is that if you have the lines get closer together by the joints, that will also make it look more 3D. Thing that people sometimes wonder about is which direction to make the line, right? Like, how do you know which direction to go in when you're making these lines? Now, I want you to think about, looking actually at your hand and notice that your hand already has lines in it. And that can also give you a clue of which direction you should go in. But generally speaking, if you notice like at the top of the finger, it's the curve is going in one way and then at the bottom it's going the other way. So you can kind of follow that, sort of formula. And this will help you, when you're drawing your own hand. And I always recommend for people to draw their own hand, like just sit there and draw your own hand and just practice because you have your own hand to draw whenever you want. So you don't need to use a photograph. You can just sit and use your hand as a model. And with my hand, in the way that I'm drawing right now, my fingers are kind of like scrunched together. So one of the things that I'm trying to kind of show is sort of like that tension between the fingers as they're pressed together. So whenever you're drawing your hand also, I wanted just to mention, if you move or your hand moves slightly, it can kind of throw off the drawing a bit because your perspective in relationship to your hand changes, right? So you have to kind of be mindful of keeping your hand in the same position, the whole time. And if you do need to get up to, move your hand around, if it's bothering you or whatever, you want to just try to go back to that same position because as the perspective of your hand changes, so will the drawing, and everything that you're doing for the drawing would be different. So that's just something that I wanted to also mention. And then as you can see, the curve of the lines depends on what's actually going on in the finger, right? So if my fingers are really, curved, like right now, they're very curved in this section versus that second, joint area on that same finger where the finger's not as curved, right? The lines are not as curved. So just, you want to notice those kind of details to try to decide, okay, like how curved should those lines be? And sometimes when people do cross contour, what I've noticed over the years is that sometimes people misunderstand what the assignment kind of is, and they sort of end up putting grid lines over the object. So you don't want to do that. It should not look at all like a grid. It should look, every line that you put, you should be asking yourself, well, is this making it look more 3D? And if it is, then, you're doing it exactly as it should be. And if it's not, then, okay, you're not, maybe refer back to the video. Because again, you want the lines to be helping to show the 3D quality. Another tip is always a good idea to keep your pencil relatively sharp. It helps kind of keep your lines cleaner. And this is a thing that I don't always follow. And I have to always remind myself I got to sharpen my pencil, throughout the drawing. But that's definitely helpful. Another thing with drawing hands that's helpful is to be sure to observe things like details like the nails and, the wrinkles in your hand and those kinds of things. And to look at the positioning of your hand kind of in relationship between, your palm and your fingers. And to as much as you can, try to make sure that the proportions look correct. So whenever you're drawing hands, those are just some general pointers to be helpful. And if you're interested, if you came upon this video and you're working on cross contour, but you want to try to start with this technique with simpler objects, I have a playlist with a bunch of different cross contour drawings, which I'm, as time goes on, I'm going to keep adding to. But it starts with really basic objects like, fruits or squash or, things like that. I did one recently for a pumpkin. I did an elephant figurine. So just like different things like that, it could be a good thing to just start. If you're new to this concept, I do recommend starting with a more simple object and then work your way up to something like a hand or a face, which is more complex than just drawing a more simple object. And I also created a guide on how to crosshatch and do cross contour. So if you'd like the guide, just put in the comments that you'd like it and I'll send you the link. And another thing is I generally will draw, the dark to light back to dark in one stroke of a line. But you can also draw it really light in pencil and then go over it and make it a little bit darker towards the edges. You just want to make sure that if you do that, that you have the lines be gradual. Like you don't want to have it to be too sudden. And when you do the palm of the hand, you want to make sure that your lines go across the entire palm, and that will also, be the right thing to do for that section of your hand. And if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe. I'm trying to get up to 600 subscribers, and I appreciate everyone who's subscribed so far and is watching the videos, and I hope that they're helping with your drawing. So when you're drawing the palm of your hand, you'll notice that especially if it's sort of scrunched up like mine is here, you have a lot of wrinkles in it and you want the lines to sort of trace around that form. So, this is where the observational aspect of drawing really comes in. You want to be looking at all those kind of details. And now I'm just adding in the vertical cross contour. So, this is one of those things that you could have a drawing with just horizontal cross contours and that would be fine. But you could also add vertical cross contours as well. So just to recap, one of the most important things is that the variation in line from going from dark to light back to dark, the distance between the lines are going to be really critical. And then also, of course, just making sure that the curvature of the lines matches up with whatever's happening in your hand. So let me know in the comments what you think. And please check out the other cross contour videos if this is something that you're working on and you want to explore a few different types of cross contour. I have on pumpkins and I have on some basic objects. So I have a mix of different things depending on what you're trying to draw. And thank you again for joining, and I will see you next time.